to write on protocols already observed, and my background and training and experience market that precedent and recognize the founder members duly represented here, the board members of the trust. I'll say a bit about the trust in my presentation. And also chairpersons of committees for the Zim Code 1 structure and project, and also Zim Code 2. I want also to observe corporate governance colleagues who have been with me and others in the journey, Jackson, Mining Rose, and Mumina Kungwa, and many others, including my daughter and son-in-law, who are in the crowd there. It's no nepotism, it's just love for what Dad does is what they, believe should be supported. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to start by thanking you for creating time to come and be part of this press conference. Why are we here? Just to tell you that there is a history to the present. The history comes in the form of what prompted Zim Code 1. Colleagues, as you remember, in the late 2008 to 2009, Zimbabwe went through a bad patch where corporate collapses, business failures were a daily phenomenon. It was then that the three founder members decided to look at what could be the cause and what could be the solution. And we sat together and say, let's establish an organization called Zim Code 1, which is a public trust, with a trust deed registered with the registrar of deeds, meant to pioneer and drive the issues to do with corporate governance and ethical leadership, to deal with why corporate businesses are collapsing. And we believe we were in time, carefully, in organizing resources and coming together with the project Zim Code 1, delivering this document. And it was launched on the 9th of April 2015. That date is major, and I'll say something about it in my presentation. So, the trust is a board of trustees, chaired by me, and the core members of the board initially were the CEO and chair of the founder members, OTZ, Quality Corporate Governance, and SARS. But over time, as we were talking about implementing this code, we realized that it was necessary to connect with industries, organized industries. That's when we invited Chris to join, and the predecessor to Sekai Sibaraki or something, the CZI Kuvarika, yes. And we continue to look out for people with stature, with passion for corporate governance, and with relevance to our objectives. And we are still looking, and when the time comes, we'll try and expand the board of trustees for project Zim Code 2. And what have we achieved in coming up with this? First, it's the first of its kind in Zimbabwe. Second, I would want you colleagues to appreciate that those in South Africa came to witness the birth of this corporate governance code. If you read the keen for, you will see that the concept of derivatives, which we allude to in this document, was borrowed from us. Melvin King came to bless the creation and launch of this, and he borrowed. So that is a first for us to be copied by those who started the process before us. The second achievement on Zim Code 1, guess what? Is that because it is the best of the best, it has been turned into law ahead of its time. If you go to two pieces of legislation, the first is called the Public Entities Corporate Governance Act, which is an act of parliament and regulating governance and leadership in the public sector, refers to this code, turns it into law in the form of Schedule Number 1. So if you go to that piece of legislation, ladies and gentlemen, this voluntary effort has been turned into an act of parliament by extension, by annexure to the act. Ladies and gentlemen, if you go to the new Companies Act, affectionately called COMEN, and you go to section 220, specifically private sector focused. That section says you are, as an entity registered in Zimbabwe, obliged to come up with corporate governance guidelines, which must refer to this code. And you must state in what way you are relating to this code. And you are obliged to then report annually for the listed entities to what extent you are complying with the guidelines. So to us, this is an achievement. But also, when you look at annual reports, especially for listed entities, there is a deliberate acknowledgement of the existence of this code. But much more importantly, there is also confirmation that they find that compliance with what is stated here is a good thing. So we have done something. But why are we talking about why are we talking about the launch of Zim Code 2? It's also to say this one was launched with a lot of funding. Over 30 entities supported the launch. And they donated over $300,000 to fund the entire operation from start to finish, returning to this code. So we want to announce to our donors, to our sponsors who were there when we started the process, that we are starting again, the second effort. And I don't want to take the thunder from Mr. Zembe. Mr. Zembe was part of us. Mr. Zembe was part of the pioneering journey. He was in charge of raising the finances which I've alluded to. And I'm not ashamed to say he's here, and he was the first to pay $38,000 for this to see the light of day. I want to give him a round of applause. And that's the reason why I chose you to chair the fundraising committee. And I know you will do wonders. The list of those who contributed, ladies and gentlemen, is there in the first page of, was it the last page? The first page. This, as you can see, all these listed entities supported us. And we are, through this press conference, hoping that the media will communicate my appreciation for those who saw us see the light of day and say I am saying we are starting Zim Code 2, and your efforts over the years are appreciated, and we can't start the second journey without your support. Now, what were the challenges? A good story can't stand without relating to challenges. Initially, ladies and gentlemen, there was lack of buy-in for a local product, heavily funded by locals, and put together by Zimbabweans for Zimbabwean consumption. People preferred King 4, so King 3, and then later King 4. I think there is a verse in the Bible. What does it say? Where is the real? A prophet is no honor in his own people. I continued to shout. I continued to cry loudest. I continued to say, but why my Zimbabwe? Why are you not patriotic? And in the end, my voice was heard. And I can tell you proudly that as we walked through the 10-year journey, many people are started to see the value of taking pride in their own product. And as we speak right now, most entities, if not all, are relating to Zim Code 1. So, why are we starting Zim Code 2? There are 3 reasons, ladies and gentlemen. The first is that 10 years being in existence and research has indicated it's a good time to reflect, to review, reflect, and say, what are the new things which have emerged in the 10-year period? And we will be turning 10 on the 9th of April this year. So it is time for us to start reviewing this. In fact, we want to have concluded the review and launch Zim Code 2 before year end. Why are we also having Zim Code 2? Largely because of the reason I've indicated, that this is no longer best practice code, because it has been turned into, right? And so there's no Zim Code as a voluntary code in existence anymore, because it has been turned into law as Schedule 1 to Bekobo, as it is called, and also Kobe, Section 226. The last reason why we are launching a Zim Code 2 is because, you know, we want also to be remaining relevant to what is the evolving landscape in the corporate governance arena. There are so many issues which have evolved. They are things which were not covered in Zim Code 1, which have to be covered, albeit on a voluntary basis in Zim Code 2. And what are these, ladies and gentlemen? And there's cybercrime and digitalization. There's need to look into the governance of the new threat. In Zimbabwe, we have seen that most organizations are either delisting, relisting, getting suspended, and we want to see what is the governance of all those changes to our listed entities. We've also seen the phenomenon of business rescues, which have gone into distress. It's a new phenomenon taking place, replacing insolvency practitioners' experience in the past. We want to see whether there are new things around the governance of those processes. In the leadership space, we also want to see that leaders are well attuned to foundational philosophy of ethical leadership, knowing right from wrong and being able to do the right thing all the time. What are the principles, the concepts covered in expected to be covered in Zim Code 2. If you look at Zim Code 1, you will see that there was the one-size-fits-all approach. It said it applies to all entities, whether it is family-owned business, small enterprise business, the listed entity, it applies. And we see that the approach in Zim Code 1 is not playing fair to the diversity of the intended beneficiaries. So what we are introducing, hoping to introduce, and with your support, is that we wanted to look at corporate governance as being dissected into 4 hubs. The first hub is public governance, which talks to the governance of public entities, including governments. The second hub is the governance of entities. And the 4th hub is the governance of sectors, sector industries. And the 3rd is indeed your personal governance as an actor in the structures of the 3. So we are talking about the hub and spoke approach in framing Zim Code 2. When we look at 4 hubs and the spokes around each, we'll talk to what are the essential issues emerging around each of the 4 hubs. What is it that we wanted to see being addressed? And we also say, in terms of the frame of Zim Code 2, it is appreciated that Zim Code 1 was quite voluminous. It was meant to be educative and to make the point in the document, as well as turning bad behavior into good behavior in corporate leadership. But we are now saying it's important to go for cross-cutting principles which affect the 4 hubs, and then descend down to the spokes in terms of frameworks, and which leave individual entities, sectors, groups to then look at the guidelines and the frameworks to guide them in coming up with internal corporate governance documents to guide it. So that is what we are proposing. And also, a research has been done by our local researcher to look at what other latest developments in other codes, the latest being the one in the UK, looking for the page, right? In the UK, and it's still lots of focuses on horticulture. What we have got in Zim Code 1, it focuses on diversity and inclusion. Maybe it's an issue to look into. Focuses on sustainability and sustainability reporting. And this was in 2023, the latest, as we see. But it's not talking of debunking the hubs into 4 to make it clear. The second is the Singapore Code of Corporate Governance, the 2021 development. And this is focusing on technology and cybercrime and digital transformation. We believe this, we have to learn quite a bit from what they say. And of course, the Germany Corporate Governance Code, the 2020, is also talking about employee participation in decision making. A very new concept, and we've never seen trade unions in boards. When we were crafting this, and I think about people from the NEC engineering in the audience, yeah, and they know trade unions, don't fear them, they are good people. I can tell you, I chair a board where they are board members. But in Zimbabwe, you have never seen people who represent employee interests coming into the cockpit of leadership. They are feared as political animals, are coming to agitate for unrest. And let me tell you that they are not, as you see, or as you have been told. But in Germany, they are recognizing the right to employee participation in decision making. If you go to King 4 mining, you will see that issues about worker rights are put under the social committee, right? Broadly put, that's where you smuggle issues, but not a representative from the worker is in that committee. And we believe that's a development we must start to relate to and ensure that those who benefit from the new code should also be participating in this decision. Right, so that is what we would want to see go into Zim Code 2. We don't have time for this. We want to ensure that by October this year, the first draft should be out. But we believe that we can achieve what we want to achieve if we have the resolve, the passion, and the resources. We have 14 committees we have proposed to be established. And the committees are the Finance Committee, we have got the Accounting and Auditing Procedures and Controls Committee, we have got the Board of Directors Committee, Editorial Committee, Compliance and Stakeholder Relationships, we have got also the Legal Committee, and the Governance of Disputes and Business Ethics Committee. And we've got also IT and Performance and Innovation Governance, and then we've got International Best Practice Committee. We are simply suggesting this, and through the media, to invite comments on what we are suggesting, to invite new suggestions on what should be included in the committee structure. Later, as I conclude, some of the committee chairpersons in this audience who have already agreed to serve as chairpersons will be invited to speak off the cuff on what they see as their contribution to the format and the content, reliability and validity of Zim Code to as we start the program. So, just to conclude this, thank you very much. I'm excited. I see us achieving what we want to achieve. All we need, like I said, was what we have. What we have are Zimbabweans with passion, good confidence, and let's start together. And Lapson, lead the resource mobilization and everything of course. Thank you very much.
There were a lot of, skepticism, but we're able to rise above all that, those skepticism. We're able to rise above, issues that sometimes drag us as a people, where we always look externally for the best solutions instead of looking at ourselves, where we normally underrate ourselves instead of believing and having confidence in ourselves. And there is a product, as Chair Julia said, which is now codified and most of it accepted as part of our legal system. We did it the first time, we'll do it the second time, and this time we'll come up with an internationally acclaimed and recognized code. And that's our prime objective. There's no doubt that we will rise to the occasion and that the entire corporate sector, including the public sector, will come in to support the way they supported Zim Code 1, they will support Zim Code 2. I have no doubt at all that we will achieve what we set ourselves to achieve. And we have the capacity, the capability, and the resources to do so. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rationale.
Where I come from, Rationale is my president. So I'm not sure why you allowed me to speak after. But anyway, I was still grab the mic. Thank you very much. maybe 50 seconds, maybe I'll give it a new meaning, and then we just say a few words. Some few years ago, 2017, when I was sitting in the board of Chino University, I recall vividly. I suggested, this was prior to COVID-19. I said, but why are you driving all the time to Chino University for what it was not good. Everyone looked at me in the room and said, maybe it's not data. It doesn't make sense. What is it talking? 2 years down the line, one of the new life. So what am I saying here? Artificial intelligence, as we are saying, I think Zim Code 2, as we put the agenda, you can't ignore the generality of AI. It's a reality. One of the days when you look and say, artificial intelligence is just for the youngsters. To reach the issue of derivative action, as we spoke, I think it's a very interesting but emotive subject, because as much as it's a shareholder who is trying to protect the interests of the corporate, the threshold of a derivative action taking effect is quite very complex, because firstly they say you have to be a shareholder for you to raise an issue to say possibly the car park is being abused. Outside being an existing shareholder, you need to prove against or that surely there was abuse. So if you look at the test, the threshold of proving that there is abuse in a company, I think it's quite very discouraging. You can't protect the interests of the company. Another issue, I think, cybercrime, I had my colleagues talking about it. One of the days also, you think cybercrime is just an imagination. With big data in companies, data is a relationship with cybercrime, because the incentive for cybercrime when data is quite very massive, you can't overlook it. Data infrastructure. Traditionally, we talk about a quota for board meetings. You wait for 3 months, then we have a board meeting. But the data quotas and technology coming, possibly every week. You don't necessarily have to be operational as a board member, but you need to know what is happening. It's fast out there. And lastly, allow me to speak into also age. We have the experience, but we also need to look at the youngsters out there to see how we balance. When we say balance going, people think of what just skills, but also the demographics of age. We need to speak into them. It's an emerging trend which is quite very pronounced. Thank you very much. I'm sorry for a
bit of evolution across the landscape, as the chair has pointed out. And one of the big points of evolution that all of the previous speakers have pointed out are revolving around technology and digitalization and everything. One would think my committee is almost redundant. I mean, they seem to speak everything that I'm supposed to speak about, but it just shows you how important it is. So we'll be looking into ICT innovation and performance, and what we're going to do primarily is to focus on the leadership aspect of it. So this is looking at the boards themselves, coming up with the prescriptions and recommendations of how they would venture to lead a digital-first entity in a modern environment, a competitive digital-first entity, because we're going to look into digitalization not for the sake of having digitalization for parity, but for the sake of gaining a competitive advantage. And that's what the modern world is all about. We always say that the future belongs to the fast, and we cannot be left behind, especially with our code. So when we look at our digital transformation, we're going to be looking at the implications thereof, especially at board level, for the sake of ownership of the leadership. So we'll be looking at the technology aspects of it, the business modeling aspects of it, the monitoring and measuring aspects of it, because you can't venture to try and control and understand that you cannot measure how far you're doing that properly. We're also going to be looking at the risk terrain, because the digital terrain is a very different terrain to what boards are used to. A few speakers mentioned before around the cybercrime and everything, completely set of risks, different set of risks that, you know, your more archaic works will not be very akin to. And then the big one obviously is the scope of governance naturally has expanded. So under your umbrella term of your corporate governance, you have some governance implications, that is implications that you start to come across when you look at your digitalization. You start to look at your data governance, you start to look at your AI governance, as AI has been spoken about quite a bit. You start to look at your corporate digital responsibility as well. Quite a lot to look at in that space that we intend to cover, just for the sake of remaining relevant in terms of what we're going to speak about in our code. And it's important to mention that the prescriptions and recommendations that we are going to put in that code are not things that we're just thumb-sucking. We're equally drawing from modern academia as well as, and more importantly, worldwide industry standards to recommend what we're going to be putting into that document that Mr. Zim has pointed out we aim to put on a global platform to be recognized as a beautiful work of art from Zimbabwe. Thank you.
This committee that draws Zim Code, and it also all the brother is Kenyan people. I think before I open the floor, I just want to share with you the reason why the Standard Association of Zimbabwe is an integral part of this community and why we will continue to be. I think the mechanism, you will be aware that the Standard Association of Zimbabwe is the national standard body in Zimbabwe. By the nature of that, we represent the country in terms of standard development in various forums. But our second demand is the international organization standardization for non-trade is ISO. It is ISO level where we develop more than 26,000 standards. And these standards are solutions to some of the issues that have been spoken about. And let's talk about the few classes of standards. I think we spoke about AI. You know, this is more like these are the new issues that are arising. But on the AI front, we have the new standard 40,000 that talks to the AI issues. In terms of technology, we have 27,000 series talk about technological issues. We have many standards talking to sustainability issues. And in terms of the ethical leadership, the other issues that we're talking about, we have many standards. Let's talk about 37,000 standards, 37,000 series. And this is talking to government of organizations. 37,000 is one talking to pilot driver and management system. 37,002 is talking to whistleblowing management system guidelines. I think these are solutions that have been offered by millions of experts around the globe to resolve some of the issues that we're talking about. So we just want to ensure that as we develop, I like the way you guys will put it, to say you want an international recognized code. And borrowing from these standards, some are also help us to achieve that. But let me say those few ways to stick to them in general. Allow me to open the floor for questions. And the esteemed department here and all the other speakers will be able to respond. But the way we want to proceed is you will tell us who the person is relating to, and we can go ahead and introduce yourself and ask the question. So,
let us start with something in regards to narrow contributions. So the number 40 is a number arrived by invoking inclusion and diversity. Everybody's contribution has been taken care of. But when we hear from those who are sitting in the community, their first term of reference is, are you sure you can stand on your own to relate to the four hubs which we related? Can you see the possibility of amalgamating your community with others so that you will promote efficiency and effectiveness? So yes, we started big, but in the process, in the midst of all this, we see ourselves coming down to maybe 6, 7 communities. Yeah.
I like the way you said obviously after the day and then you will need to see whether you can go out to really make sense.
That was, but just to say, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, it's not taking presence here for granted. Allow me to thank the founding members who have taken time out to realize that Zim Code 1, much as we achieved, you know what was pronounced by today here. But we don't need to do something to close the gap that is now there. So it's good that this initiative has been taken. And I want to thank all those who made Zim Code 1 a success.
And our kind of plea as the founding members is to request you to remain on the board as we embark on this journey to the come out of Zim Code 2 with an ambitious target of October. So all the committees, chairpersons who are here, you have your way cut out. So I want to wish you all the best as we embark on this journey. Alex, I'm sure you heard from the chair. We wish you all the best in your mobilization efforts. I think you provide the oil that will ensure that this engine will be able to run the expected distance. All the media partners, thank you so much for blessing this occasion. We hope you'll be able to broadcast and allow other Zimbabweans out there to also participate in the process of coming up with this. In terms of standards development, the standards that I spoke about are not developed by individuals, they are developed by experts who are dotted all over around the country. So we also help to bring some of them on board in the communities so they can also contribute in terms of coming up with the Zim Code 2. I think all those who provide the name, the food that we are going to enjoy after this, we want to thank you very much. So thank you for this.